How have talent recruitment markets been faring across Southeast Asia over this last pandemic-disrupted year? And what hiring strategies are we likely to see in the post-COVID marketplace? Shining a spotlight on all things HR, this is the HR Agenda, our last episode for 2021. So we'll also be taking a look back at all the people issues in what has been yet another challenging year for HR leaders across the region. I'm Paul Howell. Joining me here this week is digital transformation expert Laurence Smith. Laurence, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be here and an honour to be on Chief of Staff Asia.
Now, you've literally written the book on how HR leaders can successfully lead digital transformations across their organisations. What's been high on some of your clients' agendas over the past few weeks?
So a few things are obvious, which is, COVID and hybrid working. That's been a massive priority for the last year or two. That's not going away. The other continuing and I would say accelerating challenge is talent acquisition and employee experience. And the third is what you just alluded to, which is, everybody's realized that, they have to accelerate digital transformation. It's no longer optional or even the cost of doing business. It's simply how, business gets done these days, connecting with customers, partners, and employees.
Well, thanks very much, Laurence, and it's great to have you with us as we delve into this week's agenda. Top of which this week has been the impacts of the pandemic and general disruption on hiring markets throughout the Southeast Asia region. Chief of Staff Asia launched its exclusive report on this topic last month, and it shows that the industry has been challenged on many fronts over the last year, including ongoing skills shortages across a number of industries and the breaking down of old models for managing internal talent. Laurence, what do you think is the biggest change the HR profession and recruitment industry have faced this year in terms of hiring practices?
So I think it's a couple of things. First of all, there's a massive talent shortage. So there's a huge need for reskilling both in the workplace and within society. At the same time, people are, that don't have jobs are desperate and are looking around and applying, quite literally in some cases all over the place without a lot of rhyme or rhythm. So that's making it hard for employers to sort of identify who are real candidates. And when you get people, again, a lot of people have been impacted by the pandemic. So you can often lose them quite quickly because if they get offered a pay rise anywhere else, they're a lot more fluid and mobile. On the other hand, you also have people, once they have some form of security and financial stability, they're seeking more purpose. They're looking for organizations that are more aligned with what they believe in, be that sustainability and climate change, be it authenticity in the workplace, be it, diversity and inclusion and how they treat the workers, or indeed the types of products they sell and how they're looking to the local community. I think the last point I'd make there is, there's also a percentage of people, and I think it's rising, that are not looking for a job anymore. I know that sounds strange, but they're looking for a way to make a living and have the type of life they've always wanted. So there's a lot more people moving towards the gig economy, going independent, starting up their own things, or even, and I think one of the results from the pandemic and a lot of the quick reactions, knee-jerk reactions by some companies in terms of firing staff and letting them go, is can you trust a job anymore? Can you trust just a job anymore? Do you also need to have a part-time business, a side hustle, passive income, alternative ways of making money? So I think overall, we're seeing much more fluid marketplace with a lot more options that HR and recruiters have to deal with, which is making it a lot more complex.
So this year we saw a labour shortage due to the changing needs of employees and the other impacts related to the pandemic. What can HR do to win even just a little bit more than their fair share of what is a shrinking talent pool across the region?
So there's a few things. Some are more strategic, some are more tactical. At the strategic level, being clear what the organization's purpose is, why the organization exists, why it's in business, and having values and culture and leadership that align with that, and thus make it the type of place people want to work. That's, some of the big strategic things they can do. At a more tactical level, and again, this varies by industry, is, what's the value proposition, the give and the get between the employee and the employer. And we're seeing in different markets, if you take the US as an example, just because we generally have best data from there, about a third of payroll is now going towards employee benefits and insurance in some ways and means. So what we'll probably see in Asia emerging in different markets is, again, a bigger focus on benefits, but making it a lot more flexible and really working towards becoming that employer of choice by giving people options and letting it make it very personal for them as to what they get out of the employment contract with that employer.
Now, outside of the pandemic, organisations are also facing somewhat of a cultural transformation, with diversity and inclusion ideals now high on the agenda of almost all hiring teams in the region. Laurence, what have recruitment professionals had to change in order to adapt to these new demands?
I mean, first of all, I think this is fantastic. I think it's a marvellous outcome of the terrible thing. Right, the pandemic. I wrote a book a year ago, which in fact you kindly helped edit, Transformation Mindset. And I think somewhere in there I talked about a perfect storm of accelerated creative destruction. And I think I've just changed that this morning, just thinking about this interview, to a perfect storm of accelerated creative adaptation. Because what we're finally seeing is organizations taking, diversity, equality, equity, inclusion seriously. And really doing lots of things to it. From a recruiter and attracting talent perspective, I think they've had to look beyond their traditional talent pools and email lists and networks. They've had to go to audiences and sectors they're not used to working with. So they've had to really go quite beyond. And something I saw as well in a couple of organizations I've been working with is where you have a true partnership with your recruiters and your external search people. They've been pushing you. I've often seen them, the best of them, coaching or indeed coaxing HR and internal leaders to say, you wouldn't normally think about this person, but here's why you should. And be that from a gender perspective, or any of the dimensions of inclusion and diversity. I think we're seeing more willingness to consider candidates that you wouldn't normally think.
Moving on, and we're also looking back at 2021 today and some of the key issues that the HR profession has had to deal with over the past 12 months. Chief of Staff Asia has just launched its end-of-year review, and one of the highlights has been the versatility and adaptability that the HR teams have shown during this second year of the pandemic. Now, things like digitalisation of HR technology to support hybrid and remote working, also labour shortages, and workplace vaccination regulations have been some of the issues that HR professionals have had to grapple with. Laurence, do those issues ring true for you as well? And what is the biggest change that you've seen across the HR profession this year?
Yes, absolutely, Paul. First of all, I think the best news is that it's no longer about HR having a seat at the table. I said, I think about 18 months ago as the pandemic was starting, this is HR's greatest ever opportunity to step forward, because we're having to work closely with the CEO, the CFO, the head of comms, the head of facilities and real estate, and obviously the CTO, to work through the pandemic. And I think over the last 12, 18, 24 months, HR has really stepped forward and done quite an amazing job. So I think we've never been operating at such a senior level. I think that's the best news. I think second, HR has been looking a lot more outside in. Traditionally, apart from recruiting, HR has been pretty internally focused. And I think we've become even more aware of the external environment and what's required to prepare the organization to be ever more adaptable and resilient.
Now, like last year, a whole lot of energy has had to be spent on fast-changing workplace and social distancing regulations in every jurisdiction across the region. In fact, you can safely add issues around vaccinations into that mix as a special one for 2021. Are you expecting these rules to continue changing in the new year, Laurence?
I'm afraid I think it's inevitable. There'll be new variants and changes in travel rules, vaccination rules, social distancing rules. The good news is I think we're kind of used to it. The organizations have adapted, people and families have adapted. Do we enjoy it? Do we like it? No. Are there some upsides in terms of personal space and time and freedom and flexibility? I think for some, yes. But I think as organizations, we can't get complacent about this. We can continue have to think about what protects our workforce and what engages our employees, whether they're remote, hybrid, or in the office. But I'm afraid I think these rules and changes are inevitable and will continue and possibly get worse before it gets better.
Now, the pandemic has also created some significant labour shortages in key industries. Laurence, do you have any advice for HR and businesses in these sectors where finding and holding on to skilled workers is getting more and more difficult?
I think there's a couple of things. First of all, if you know what are your critical skills, you need to be continuously scanning and monitoring the marketplace, and not just your own marketplace, but perhaps regionally or globally, and identifying who the best talents are in those spaces. Doesn't matter who they work for now, and maybe even reaching out for them. I've done this in the past, where you just reach out and build relationships with people you have no intention of hiring in the short term, but they're critical talent in that particular space, and you want to build a relationship with them and just let them know that you're around. So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing, and I'm going to be very radical here, right? If you can't attract critical talent, and this is often around technology and tech skills, let them go. Don't try to employ them full-time. Don't necessarily even lock them down to a full-time contract for 6, 12 months like you're used to. If that is not working for you, or if that is not giving you enough talent in that space, let them go and become the best place for gig economy workers, for freelance experts, for elance economy people, that they want you to be part of their portfolio. So rather than trying to tie them down as employee, try to be one of the companies that they want in their portfolio of companies they're working with, because it's where they learn the best, they work with the coolest new tech, they enjoy working with the people, they like the type of company you are, the purpose you're living, or whatever. So I think we have to go from this old model of we have to catch them, have them, lock them down, tie them to their desk, even if it's virtual, as an employee or a long-term contractor, to a percentage of our people will be like that. But there may well also be a percentage that are always in the cloud, that are freelance workers. How do we make it so that they want us to be part of their portfolio, and really completely flip our thinking on that? So there's a controversial idea for you.
Thanks very much, Laurence. Up next, we're talking HR Tech with Chief of Staff Asia's Technology Editor, Vandana Nanwani, who joins us from Jakarta. Hi, Vandana. It's great to have you back. What will you be sharing about in today's HR Tech update?
Hi, Paul. Glad to be here. In today's episode, I will be discussing electronic contracts and agreements, weighing the pros and cons to see how it can benefit HR professionals. Traditionally, contracts and agreements need signatures and are usually done in person. Paperless contracts, on the other hand, still require a signature, but an electronic one. So rather than having to print each and every contract, firms can create them electronically and even store them online. This method is gaining more attraction amongst HR professionals because it is faster and easier to create with minimizing the risk of making mistakes. It can ease the administration burden for HR professionals, especially for big organizations who have hundreds and thousands of employees and have to make contracts for each one of them.
Yes, they are certainly gaining traction in the hiring space, but Vandana, can you tell us what other HR processes can be eased by using electronic contracts and signatures?
Electronic contracts take a shorter time to create than paper ones. With paperless contracts, the risk of making mistakes is minimized because it can be edited and applications can be used which have fixed templates. Moreover, the storage for them is more accessible than having paper ones, which are usually stored in files and cupboards. Having them stored online makes it easy for employers to access them anytime. This in turn will increase efficiency for the exchange of contracts to potential employees and clients. At the same time, it can help organizations cut costs on things like paper, printers, and files, as well as help reduce its carbon footprint by reducing the use of paper.
So what is the technology that is involved with creating paperless contracts now?
So the two main technologies needed to enable electronic contracts are electronic signatures and enough storage. Now, to enable electronic signatures, organizations can look into technologies such as DocuSign, Adobe EcoSign, and Write Signature. These are some applications that have been used by firms, and they facilitate electronic signatures to be implemented with ease. Now, these are legally accepted in the USA. In Asia, the Singapore franchise of Guzman Gomez has already implemented paperless contracts, and they use DocuSign to conduct all their paperless contracts, as DocuSign is part of cloud technology that helps store and manage electronic contracts as well as facilitate digital signatures all under one roof. It is also able to capture information related to documents such as IP addresses, timestamps of when the document was sent, viewed, and signed. This also provides a safety blanket to both sides and minimizes the risk of getting forged. In addition, it is backed up by the Electronic Transactional Act in Singapore, so it is legal. Now, in other Southeast Asian countries such as Malaysia, Thailand, and Philippines, electronic signatures are legally recognized and will not be declined. Indonesia, however, still needs to create a law to legalize electronic signatures. Finally, for storing a large number of electronic contracts, firms can look at technology that is already established, such as cloud storage, Dropbox, or Google Drive.
Thanks very much, Vandana, and we'll see you again in the next episode of the HR Agenda.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, that's just about all we have time for on the HR Agenda today. Thanks very much to you, Laurence Smith, for being part of this episode.
And thank you, Paul. It's great to be on Chief of Staff Asia. I've really enjoyed it and look forward to having another conversation next year, perhaps.
And thanks to all the HR professionals out there watching us this week in Southeast Asia. Now you can check out chiefofstaff.asia for our exclusive end-of-year review of 2021. That's online at the moment, and looking a few weeks ahead of that, we'll be unveiling our look at the expected trends and issues facing HR in 2022 from January 5 next year. Our team is also now taking nominations for the Chief of Staff Asia HR Ecosystem Awards. Now, this window must close on December 31. So if you're an HR service provider or an HR professional working with a fantastic partner or solution, get involved for some much needed recognition of all that hard work. All the links and details from everything we've spoken about today will be in the article or description box of this video, and I urge you all to subscribe to keep our channels alive. I'm Paul Howell, and thank you very much for watching the HR Agenda.